Okay, I think we have a quorum here. We can go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm Brian Odom, the acting NASA Chief Historian. Today we are hosting Ben Feist for his talk on Apollo in real time, how the capture and preservation of mission context enables future science. I think that title captures the point of the existence of the history program at NASA. So I'm loving this. I love this talk, and obviously the product is something most of us are familiar with, but to have a chance to hear Ben talk about it is incredibly, we're pleased to have him. First, a few housekeeping issues. As Kat mentioned there, just remember to keep your mics and your video turned off. We'd hate to have to lose you on the call, but we'd have to kick you out if you can't do that there. We definitely don't want to do that. Today, go ahead and make free use of the chat function. Go ahead and put any comments you have for Ben in there, or any questions. If we have a chance at the end, we might get to a little bit of Q&A, but definitely going to devote as much time as we can to hearing Ben tell us about this incredible product. Also note that we will be recording the session, and that has started right now. So now, just without further ado, let's introduce today's speaker. Ben Feist is a data visualization and informatics software engineer at Johnson Space Center. He's building exploration science systems that will enable humanity's return to the moon. Ben's path to NASA is somewhat unique, having spent his career online digital consulting space. He worked evenings and weekends for 9 years on a personal passion project to bring several of NASA's Apollo missions to life online. And that brings us to this. It's an award-winning piece. Ben has done an incredible amount of work getting just bringing this to the public's attention and creating again, I don't want to keep gushing about it. We'll get to it. Just an incredibly important topic. So now just go ahead and turn it over to Ben. Ben, if you're ready to go, we'll get started.
Sure. Thanks so much, Brian. Let me just share my screen here and make sure that's all working before we get going. Can you guys see everything?
That looks great.
Okay, well, thanks very much for having me, and I appreciate the warm introduction. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about Apollo in real time and how it came to be, but then also now how it's being applied. You're going to hear me refer to this idea of mission context, which might sound like a bit of a contrived way to describe what this is, but I think you'll see hopefully through this what the value of that context is and how it's greater than just the actual data from each of the missions. A bit about me and my background. I'm essentially a software engineer that just makes things on the internet. To summarize my 25-year career, that's what I do. I studied computer science, but always on the visual side of things. And wanting to make interactive experiences was really what it was all about. I graduated in about 95, which was when CD-ROMs ruled the world, and I really wanted to build CD-ROMs. So that's kind of what this Apollo real time turned out to be. I've incidentally become an Apollo historian, but that I didn't start out as one, but you learn a lot when you go through a process like this. And as Brian mentioned, I'm now part of the NASA family working at Johnson Space Center, working in the Flight Operations Directorate and within Astro Materials to build systems that we're going to use when we go back to the moon. And I have some of the content here that describes what that is. And I don't want to make it sound like I did this all on my own. I mean, a lot of these slides talk about steps that we did, but there's a really dedicated team of people that have helped, both volunteers and professionals in different divisions and groups within NASA and within the National Archives and things like that. And very much thank you to everybody who contributes to this. I think along the way, I did start on my own. It was really myself and the first person on that list, Stephen Slater, working on this. And along the way, we've caught some like-minded people that want to help out. So really, this all has to do with digitizing, of course, which is a major part of the undertaking here. But I want you to think about digitizing as usually we think in these silos, and these vertical silos, like Apollo 17 is an example. We'll think in terms of media types, like I want all the 16mm film or I want all the still photography. And the only thing tying these things together is the mission. And so these silos become a mission when they're all pulled together. And really what we're looking for here is a common denominator amongst all the different silos that would be a way to connect all that data together. And if you include present day data that's being gathered about the moon that can put Apollo 17 into greater context, we can have Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which I'll talk about here on the right, gathering new information, but then also post-mission sources of data that weren't part of Apollo 17, but they were stuff that we've learned about Apollo 17 after. Really what we want is something that connects all of this together to try to put everything into context. So here's a way to visualize that process. Here we have on the top left the NASA audio collection, the Flickr photo gallery of all the 70mm still photography. We have streams of video from each mission. This is video that was transmitted to the ground on the J missions. This is a footage from Apollo 17. And then in the center, we have a transcript that was typed up of everything that was said. And in this case, I'm flipping through the transcript of Apollo 17. It's 2,400 pages long. I mean, there's a lot that was said here. But of course, you can't include all 2,400 pages when you make a 30-minute documentary about something like Apollo 17. So really what we want to do is take all these different data types and tie them all together into that common denominator of data connectedness, which provides that connection between all the different silos. And that common denominator is essentially, when did everything happen on the mission? Like, what time did things happen? It's a really simple question, but very hard to answer with historical material like this. So that little animation represents a huge amount of effort that was done by that group of people. And Apollo 17's process of digitization took 6 years, and I'm going to talk a bit about what those steps were like. So, we start with mission photography. This is some pictures of the actual flight film and the cryogenic storage that it is kept in. It is scanned very rarely. So when you do scan it, you want to make sure you do a great job, and they have been doing a fantastic job of scanning them. Here's just one still to give you an idea of how wonderful this imagery is of a 70mm, and it's just absolutely breathtaking, every single shot. This is Jack Schmitt on Apollo 17 getting something out of the lunar roving vehicle. To try to understand the scale of this, you have to go look at the Flickr archive that Kip Teague assembled and put there in 2015. And he scraped from all over the place different image sources and collected it finally all together in one place. And it's all unprocessed here on Flickr, and it's really something to check out. But again, this is like that view of only photography, right? Of course, it's Flickr. But what we want to do is we want to take that photography and figure out when each picture was taken. So here's a list of photos that were taken on 17 with ground elapsed times on the left. So that's 165 hours, 1 minute, 20 odd seconds into the mission, this photo was snapped. And that's really what we want to know for Apollo in real time, is that kind of view. So in more media types, audio, video, film. For audio, we have the amazing work being done by the audio room at Johnson Space Center with under the supervision of John Stoll and the work of Greg Wiseman to digitize audio and put it on the Internet Archive. There is a huge amount of material available on the Internet Archive, and it's kind of put there for posterity in its raw form. So again, you can go look there if you want to see what the starting point looks like for trying to figure out when everything occurs on a mission. We have film, and here's an amazing photo of the 70mm film that was found in the National Archives and famously was scanned to make the Apollo 11 film that I was privileged enough to take part in helping to make. And here's a frame from that film to give you an idea of the level of quality. Now, here's a picture of Stephen I had to put in here because without archive and archival research, this material is scattered far and wide. It's kept very carefully and curated with great attention at the National Archives, but there is a lot of material at the National Archives, and it's very hard to find when you don't even know what you're looking for. You just want to know, hey, is there stuff around that's generally about this? And lo and behold, with good archival research, you can find that material. So Stephen helped to scrape together a massive amount of film that And with all that archive that was done by Johnson Space Center, then there was the process of assembling that stuff all together. And here's a picture of Adobe Premiere where the idea was, let's create empty time code for the entire duration of the Apollo 17 mission. 17 was the one I did first. So, there's an 8-hour period of time, and all it is that ticking time code, which you can see on the bottom right of the image at the top right. And here, if you look for the first few minutes, this is the first 15 minutes after the launch of Apollo 17. You can see there's a lot of different media of this launch, different audio sources, and cameras being turned on and off. And I'm placing them all back, kind of unediting all that material and placing it back to when it was taken on the mission. And, of course, there's less footage as you go on. Here's the first 8 hours of Apollo 17. You can see they turned on the 60mm camera on board a few times. Here's during a transposition and docking maneuver, 3 hours and 51 minutes after the mission. Here's a still from that at the top right. But you can also see the benefit here that it starts to show gaps in the record. We start to realize that we're missing audio for different parts of the mission. And that can now send you on a hunt to say, hey, how come we don't have any air-to-ground audio for these periods of time? And actually, that process, these have subsequently been filled in with audio. That transcript that I showed, transcription is a huge problem still within NASA. There's a lot of value to it, and it's very hard to do. And actually, during Apollo, what they did is they hired court stenographers to listen to phonetically what the crew was saying, because these weren't trained NASA people that knew what all the terminology was, and they would just sound it out and type on this endless roll of paper that would then be put on an overhead, and you'd get about a 5-minute delay from when somebody said something, so that you could have the ability to, like, what did he just say about that thing that he was observing on the surface, and turn and look at the overhead projector and see a time delay transcript of roughly what he was saying. Eventually, those transcripts were done much more carefully for post-mission analysis that resulted in these documents, which, I mean, who could resist a document that has a cover that looks like this? These are those 2,400 page long technical air-to-ground transcripts on the right. And the process here was to digitize them into a data structured format. So we had this idea of columns of when something was said, who said it, and what did they say, being structured into an actual tabular format that a computer can use to try to process that information. But you can see that there's a huge amount of gaps in the time. For some reason on Apollo 17, they did not capture every timestamp every time somebody said anything. So I needed to fill in those gaps. So part of the process of correcting the transcripts and also then retiming the transcripts was to take that digitized version of it on the left, the completely reconstructed 302-hour-long Premiere project on the right, and read the transcript as I listened and compare the time codes in the bottom of the video with the actual time code timestamps that are in the transcript on the left. Which would be a terrible job if somebody didn't want to have to do it, but I was very interested in this topic, and as Brian mentioned, it was something I just did to unwind after work, kind of like reading a book, and it took a very long time, but it was a rewarding amount of time. If you go do this too much, you go a bit cross-eyed, so you take a break, maybe don't do it on the weekends, and eventually it resulted in this completely corrected and retimed transcript of Apollo 17. And you can see we're near the end of the mission here. This is just before reentry, and we're at 35,000 utterances. I don't remember what the total number is, something like 38,000 utterances throughout the whole mission that are now all corrected and timestamped. Then we have lunar sample data. So this is now we're getting closer into the reason I'm at Astromaterials. Lunar sample information catalog. This is what was created after the materials were brought back to Earth, taken into the Lunar Receiving Lab, cataloged from the bags, the collection bags. You can see SCB sample collection bag in the top left. Bag number 454 contains sample numbers, and then there's listed on the right. By the way, those are all missing the leading 7, which means Apollo 17. I guess whoever made this document didn't want to have to type 5-digit numbers, given the first digit was always the digit 7. So this is a way to correlate, here's an example, really esoteric catalog data. Why do we care about this, and how does this contribute into mission context? Well, on the bottom, you can see in that corrected transcript, LMP, so that's Jack Schmidt, says bag 454. This is what I'm putting into it, and this is what I'm thinking about it as I'm putting into it. And now we know what was in bag 454, what sample number, and I'll show you how we use that later. And then I got information. I contacted Dr. Noah Petro of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter mission and asked if he had any data of the valley that they landed in. And he kind of laughed and said, "Of course we do." And he gave me a huge amount of data. So he gave me this very high resolution imagery of the Valley of Taurus Littrow where they landed on Apollo 17. And I'm just zooming in here in Photoshop to give you an idea of the resolution of this material. And it gets down to 60 centimeters per pixel. And you can see the descent stage still sitting on the surface and being imaged by the LRO. And if I take a higher sun angle, lower sun angle, you can actually see the footprints that the crew left and the tracks that the rover left in the scrubbed out area of the descent. As the descent engine came down, it scrubbed the lunar surface and caused a change in albedo that you could actually see as they drove tracks through. But on the rest of the moon, you actually can't see the tracks as well, but you can still see them. He also gave me elevation data. So here's the same valley where darker means lower in elevation and lighter means higher. And you can take this kind of thing, and I thought, well, maybe I can make a 3D recreation of the valley or something. And I basically punched that image into a mesh, and you create this elevation profile. So here's that same valley elevation data punched into a 3D mesh. And then you take that mesh and you paint it with that photography that I just showed you. So I'm texturing the elevation mesh with the photography of the same area, and you get this essentially perfect recreation of where they were down to 60 centimeters per pixel. I found a little model of the lunar lander and the rover, and it was fun to size them by fitting the rover, scaling it so that the wheels fit into the tracks that were imprinted on the surface, and scaling the lander so that the feet sat on the shadow of the descent stage sitting on the surface. So you know they're the right scale to what you've got. And then then you do something called ray tracing, which is essentially a way to make a photographic quality image out of this data. So you can fly through this LRO data and explore the Apollo 17 landing site. So here's frame by frame. Each frame took about 10 or 15 seconds to render, and this animation represents a week of rendering or something like that in my poor home render farm, which isn't really a render farm. It's just my computer working really hard. But again, I'm Googling my way through how to do this, and just trying to make the best of it. And I thought, okay, well, great. I've got this animation now. After all those years of working on 17, I can really start to feel what it was like there to be there. And as this animation moves, it's going to move in closer to the landing site, and you can see it'll start to appear on the center right. You'll be able to see the lunar lander sitting on the surface. It's starting to appear there. It's on the far right center. And this is what an amazing place this was. So the LRO data is really, just for me, it's helping me to realize what an amazing human adventure they were on. And I decided what I would do with it is recreate the rover traverses. So when they traversed across the valley, they had to turn the TV transmission off because they'd be bouncing around like crazy and the antenna wouldn't have a lock on Earth anyway. So the checklist just said to turn it off. So they would turn it off, and you'd hear them talking as they drove, like, "Oh, watch out, you're about to go into a crater." And 30 minutes later, they'd turn the TV on and they were somewhere new. So what I wanted to do is recreate these traverses. So this is post-mission documentation that was scanned by the History Office and preserved that shows where they went. And then here's that same view on the LRO data, where I created a spline that shows where the rover drove. So I'll just flip back and forth here. You can see this is Station 2, where they went on the second EVA at the beginning, and then driving from Station 2 to Station 3. And using that corrected transcript, I can try to figure out when they have stopped, when they've started, when they're planting a seismic charge, which is something they did on 17. And then I could use this slope graph in the animation to determine if I'd missed any stops, because the slope would be too high or too low, because you know what the speed of actual speed of the rover is. And this was a great way of showing how all this data working together can help to fix this. So here's my 3D rover sitting at station 2. And if I put a camera right where Jack's Hasselblad was hanging on the front of his spacesuit, and you look through that camera, you get the image at the top looking at the north side of the valley. And there's a photo that he took through that camera that's in the historical record right below it. And you can see that the horizon is exactly the same. And these kinds of moments when you can see that this, great, the 3D thing I did worked well. The LRO data that I have, I didn't mess up. I can literally correlate it perfectly with the historical record. And I can even help to determine if another check as to whether I have determined whether they're in the right position at a given time by when the photos appear, is the horizon the same as from my animation point. So of course, the first idea that you have is I'm going to just animate them driving around on the surface. But at 60 centimeters per pixel, which is astounding from LRO, it's still not really good enough to give you at the ground truth. You can see that the foreground here is kind of blurry. And it really just gives you the same confusing, I don't know where we are, wayfinding problem that the crew had, where instead we now know where the crew went. So why not give a better overhead view like this animation? This is what I wound up creating. This is sped up greatly, by the way, of them driving along the Lee Lincoln Scarp from station 2 onto station 3, precisely where the post-mission analysis had determined that they went. So now I've got something to show while you can hear them chattering, and I'll show an example of that in a second. But again, this imagery of rendered data of Apollo 17, really, it brings old and new together in that data connectedness way and gives you that context of where they were. And it's really just this human adventure. Blows me away every time I look at these images of just how far they went, how dangerous their traverse was. Here they are driving up to Shorty Crater, which was station 4. Shorty was where they discovered orange soil, and that they thought at the beginning might have been volcanic glass. It turned out not to be, or at least not to be new volcanic glass. It's very, very old. But you can hear Jack actually here saying, "That's far enough. I don't think we need to drive up any further." Now you can understand why you don't want to fall in there, right? And I'll just flip through some more of these. This is the boulder of station 6. And actually here you can see off in the very far top, you can see how far they went from the lander there. It was just a dot on the horizon. They of course had walk back constraints, so that if the rover broke, they'd have enough consumables to hoof it all the way back to the LEM with just enough consumables to survive that. It starts to make real that all this planning that you learn about. And here's where they eventually left the rover and left the camera and battery on to be remote controlled from Earth, while they ascended in the ascent stage, leaving the descent stage behind, as we can see. And the battery lasted for 12 or so hours, I think. It might have been 18, where they just panned around and looked at stuff. And then the battery died, and it sits there today with a dead battery. So that's the story of all the source data of pulling it all together. And I will just show you quickly what it turned into, and it's this Apollo in Real Time website. So this is the whole website. It's one page, and it is essentially everything, all 302 hours of the mission, from about 2 hours before launch on the top left, in that timeline at the top, to splashdown and recovery by the USS Ticonderoga aircraft carrier on the right, and then 2 orders of zoom that allow you to zoom into that timeline to get down to less than 1 second per pixel. So you can see here, I've got all kinds of indicators in different colors and ticks and things. The little ticks on I'll use my mouse to show you here. These little ticks show when things are said. So they're when they're speaking. The blue means that there's television coverage, that the TV has been turned on. And then I have these kinds of table of contents type material that shows what's going on. So they're starting to deploy the flag here. It's 118 hours and 23 minutes in. And I'll just play for you a second. I'll let time roll forward, and you'll see the transcript moving as they speak, the photos appearing as they're taken, and the broadcast video as it's being broadcast.
I don't want to put it. There you go. Wait a minute. It's all right. I got you reaching for the flag. How's that? That's very good, Gene. Let me get it in stereo. Houston, that's beautiful. This has got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you. Let's get a close-in one and we'll trade cameras.
So that's we're all used to seeing little clips like that, but the difference here is if you let this continue to play, it will play for another 5 days or 6 days at this point until they splash down and are recovered. It's a window into a moment on the mission put into the context of the rest of the mission, and you can search that transcript. You can really start to understand, that flag moment that we're so used to summarizing the mission with is actually a tiny drop in the bucket of what they actually achieved. So I put this online after I'd spent all that time, and it was picked up immediately as something amazing that people really enjoyed from around the world. It turns out that what I thought was, who's going to want to watch 300 hours of this other than me? But I don't care. I'm putting it online because I think it's cool. And it turned out to be that kind of short segment way to jump into the middle of the mission was what people really enjoyed. And especially during the anniversary of a mission, being able to follow along and say, what were they doing right now exactly 40 some odd years ago in the case of 17? And that following along in real time has a strange emotional effect. Like you're looking through a window into history and experiencing it as closely as you could if you were there. And of course, because I'm an interactive guy, I was very excited about this kind of reaction, which was about, good job, you made the ultimate CD-ROM. I'll take that as a compliment. So after 17, we started thinking bigger for Apollo 11, and it turns out the National Science Foundation had just paid somebody to spend a long time digitizing these tapes. These tapes are very special. They are 60 channels of conversation happening in mission control for the whole mission. And here's actually some historical footage of one of the tapes being played back on the playback machine, of which there are 2 in the world that can play these tapes. I think there were even only 2 in the world back then too. And here's what's on these tapes. So, guidance officer, flight dynamics officer, return to Earth, guidance and navigation, flight director, Capcom, it's all here. What are the flight surgeons saying the whole mission? And so the real benefit, other than just having this stuff available, was we're all used to seeing the 16 millimeter footage like this that was shot in mission control, and they did not have mics. They did not have any audio it was all really just supposed to be used for B-roll, which means like you're supposed to have a narrator over it. This is for use in a documentary. They can just show somebody at work in mission control. They were just taking it as almost like background imagery to use in a documentary. Well, again, Stephen Slater slaved over those tapes after we had done some processing on them to determine exactly when each tape was playing its material. And you can figure out, oh, hey, look, we can see a clock. Rewind here. You can see a clock on the wall there. You know exactly what, you don't always get the clock, but you can see exactly what time it is there. So let's go to that time in the tape and lip sync up that audio from the 30-track tapes. This is just an incidental moment. There's nothing special being said, but again, it's like that you're helping the the window of history to open a little wider. Here's a much more famous moment that has been lip synced up by Stephen that again is just incredible.
Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro. Go. Fido. Go. Guidance. Go. Control. Go. Telcom. Go. GNC. Go. Ecom. Go. Surgeon. Go. Capcom, we're go for landing.
Flight Fido, right on. Real good.
Roger. How's our margin looking, Bob?
It looks okay. We're about 4.5.
Roger.
So there you go. You have Gene Kranz saying we're go for landing, synced to channel 20 on recorder 2 to the silent 60mm footage of him working in mission control. So this was all put online on Apollo 11 in real time after 2 years of work, because I knew what, we all knew what we were making this time, as opposed to 6 years and we don't really know what we're making, but we're just working on it. And here's the interface that shows that 60 channels of audio from the 30-track tapes, all processed and synced exactly to mission time. So, you can sit in any position in mission control and listen to what that crew was saying at any point. So this becomes something that we can now analyze operations of missions, and current mission control thinks in these terms for all the work that we do on the International Space Station and the other things that are upcoming. When we put this online, it had an order of magnitude greater impact than the Apollo 17 website, mainly because we put it online in time for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. So this was a way to follow along exactly 50 years later to what most people in the public think only one Apollo mission happened, and that was Neil Armstrong, one small step for man on Apollo 11. So we had a huge number of people visit this. We had people really digging in. This person was upset that we were not able to listen to more than one loop in mission control at a time, so took care of that with a bunch of laptops, which I thought was hilarious. And it was used to commemorate the event all across the world with different museums and people just putting this online and saying, hey, this happened. This is what was happening right now 50 years ago. And let's all just take a moment to remember that. This was very special for me as well, that helped to work on the restoration of this mission control room, and it was finished just in time. And then also during the real anniversary of descent and landing, they had a reunion in the room where everybody stood at their stations they were at 50 years earlier. And my understanding is they actually played Apollo in real time to figure out when that exact 50th anniversary was. And my friend who was there played it for them, said you could hear a pin drop as they all listened to themselves doing their work. And then again, this past year, we did it again for Apollo 13. This time it took about 8 months to do. It's a much shorter mission, obviously. And this time we found the tapes in with the congressional investigation of the accident that occurred on 13. And you can still have this label, trouble, at 55:55, ground elapsed time. Well, that's putting it lightly. And so we digitized those tapes on the same, this is the same machine that you could see in that historical footage that's been retrofit with a multi-track playhead. And again, Stephen worked his magic and created some synchronized clips like these ones.
And 13, this is Houston. I've got another procedure for the limb. And that'll give us a docked IMU course align, over.
Dial attitude control, limb flight.
Let's be sure we have control on the limb, although he's probably out of jets right now. GNC, you got anything for the CSM?
Negative, flight.
Okay, Capcom, for the limb, we think he ought to have an 8-ball, and we ought to get his RCS heaters on.
But I think we got to get off entry battery and then do it with a flashlight through the limb. Com. It's going to kill com and everything.
Yeah, you're ready to do that. Is everybody ready to kill com in the CSM, GNC?
We might transfer power back from the limb to the CSM, but we can't hack it out of the battery.
Flighty, com. Since it's only 0.8 amps, let's hack it for a little while here.
Flight, tell me. Go ahead, tell me.
Okay, Flight. It looks like they're still on low-volt tabs.
Go, Flight.
How's the arithmetic?
Stand by, we're checking.
It's really quite an incredible thing to listen to, especially Glenn Lunny's shift right that he's in here right now. The speed at which he's thinking and the problem solving he's doing is really something else. So this is all great, and the people in the world love using this website, and I'm very humbled with the response that it's received. But what it has also introduced to me, and I had to be taught this, is that it's also a tool. So here's an example of it being used as a tool. You type in one of those sample numbers from Apollo 17, it brings you to the exact moment it was collected, and you can bring up this panel here on the right. Then this panel contains all this information post-mission, like the curation database for that sample, analysis like the sample compendium, what it means, every photo that's been taken of this sample since it was brought back, every thin section, and even every academic paper that has been written that references that sample number. And this is really an exercise in that data connectedness of making the time the index, essentially. So here you are at the moment it's being picked up, and you're given the context of now that academic paper or that thin section. And what was Jack thinking about it when he picked it up? What did he think it was? And it's kind of a new idea around how to do wayfinding. And then another way that it's being, and I've talked about this a little bit, another way that this is a tool is, here's an example of one of the traverses through the LRO data. This is from Station 2 to Station 3 again. And they drive past this boulder on the right, which you can see in the photograph there. And Jack has something to say about it, and I'll just play it here.
Big 3 to 4 meter block out here all by itself on the light mantle. I got some pictures. It was at 088 5.6.
Okay, copy that.
And it looked like a gray breccia. I'm not sure, though. It was just all I could see was the surface texture, and it had the nodular or elongate nodular texture that those breccias had up on the South Massif.
Okay, copy that, Jack.
So there's an excellent example of something that would never be kept with that photo on the right. And even those photos on the right aren't necessarily kept together. And the sum of the parts is being less than the whole when they're all brought back together. So that mission context is the difference between the sum of the parts and the whole brought back together. This, and in planetary science and in this business of space travel, details really, really matter. And that extra layer of detail is valuable. So here's an example of a picture that was taken that someone sent me. There's Dr. Petro at the front, using Apollo in real time with the latest class of astronauts at Johnson Space Center, talking about what occurred at Station 8 on Apollo 17, which was really about how to perform field geology on the surface. And the best way that Dr. Petro could do this was to show it with all the context reconstructed on Apollo real time. And because it's valuable in that way, this is what led to me being invited a few years ago now to come down and give a very similar speech to the one I've just given you to a room full of people that work at NASA who work on LRO and other things. And it was a wonderful experience. But as they explained to me the value that I've created here by using this process, they asked if I would come and help them. So the first way to do that was to come with them on an analog where we went to the Petrillo Desert in New Mexico, and we're conducting EVA on the surface and using scientific instruments. We were joined by astronaut Butch Wilmore on the top left there, who is a former commander of the International Space Station and a shuttle pilot before that. And Jack Schmidt actually joined us in the field at 82 years old. He lives in New Mexico, and he put us all to shame on this very hot day in the desert in June. And it was really personally, of course, amazing to be with Jack in the field, exactly where they trained Apollo astronauts to learn how to conduct field geology on the moon. As he showed Butch, or Butch showed him what he was learning, and then he tried to help Butch to understand even better how you can do it. And this place is a really amazing place. with ash deposits that were being studied that might be similar to the type of ash deposits that we could find around volcanism on Mars. And so here's an example of LiDAR being used to scan those ash deposits and to understand the texture and then how the layers were deposited and the scientific research that needs to be done. And these instruments provide their own data silos, of course. And it was my job to come up with a way to connect those all together as I described, and try to see if we could come up with a way to create EVA context even on an analog. So what I came up with was this kind of idea. Again, everything just indexed by time. There's Jake Bleacher, who was the field lead, and I'm scrubbing through GPS location data. So you can see us walking around, or Butch and Liz Rampy, who is the other crew member on our EVA. She's a planetary scientist. And this is a data set that was collected by UTEP, the University of Texas, at the same time. And that's why our imagery is baked into the surface there, because it was taken while we were all standing around. But this idea of all the chest cameras, GoPro chest cameras, still imagery being taken, drone footage being gathered, data sets, GPS data. And here's an example of a handheld instrument getting a X-ray fluorescence reading, and then having that information placed into the waypoint that Butch created when he asked for that reading to be gathered, and coming up with a way for all that data to be indexed by when it happened on the EVA. So this led to me being invited down to Johnson Space Center into the Astromaterials group. And here's some examples from Apollo 16 that are on display in the lab, which is just incredible to see. These are literally from the moon and brought back on Apollo, and they keep all of the material in this vault. And part of this idea is that we could, by the way, I think they make all the new guys try to open the door. And it's actually unlocked. I just can't. There we go. Okay. The idea is, this traceability idea of tracking everything could be used in the lab as well. As you do research, if you're tracking everything that occurs like you are on an EVA, then if you get an unexpected result, you can rewind back and use this type of technique to understand what might have caused that unexpected result. By the way, here's a picture of one of the Apollo 17 sample containers in the vault, which I just had to show. And this idea continues forward into using the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, wanted to use it. And so the Neutral Buoyancy Lab is an external of the ISS underwater, where they train for spacewalks, and they have the same context problem. So here, they had a part of the space station out on this day when I was there. And they said, well, what could you recreate something that has our umbilical connector telemetry data along with audio and video, so that when we're training for EVA, we have the same kind of system that we have on Apollo in real time. And I created this prototype, which lets you scrub through time and the umbilical data on those charts, and including, in this case, arm orientation data on the top right, and different audio sources and video sources all cooked together into one findable thing. So I iterated on this a little bit with different ways to analyze this data, and eventually got to a point where it was generalized enough so that now you can pick any of the data that you want, get a different graph up, jump to a point in the mission, and you can now use this if you work within the Neutral Buoyancy Lab to try to understand what was happening in the NBL. This quickly, because they trained for EVA, this quickly caught the attention of the EVA office, and they said, NBL is great, but let's do this for mission control. And I thought that might take a long time to try to show enough value that people would want to take the risk to do this in mission control. But it's so tempting and so useful that people wanted it way sooner than I thought. So it has resulted in this effort. This is what I spend most of my time on now. It's called CODA. And the mission of CODA is to consolidate the context of missions, whether it's training and testing or actual missions, and into an easy to use platform. And I've gotten permission to show you some of this. So here's an example of an EVA that is planned at the top. This is what we think we're going to do when we're on the spacewalk on the space station. And here's what actually occurred below. on the as executed timeline, and you can see there's some difference there as you encounter unexpected things during the spacewalk. And this analysis of the gap between these two things, either planning better to make the top better match the bottom next time, or understanding why something deviated, is a major amount of effort that's expended within mission control. And this is so here's an image of CODA being used, and it's essentially Apollo in real time, but it's space station in real time. This is a 24-hour day, and you can pick any day. And this is, as you scrub through the day, you can see the time change of where the sun is on the terminator on the Earth. And you can also see the different video downlinks that are available at different times. And as imagery is taken, it appears on the top right, and you get 2 downlink. Right now, it's only 2 downlinks that you can choose from the top of any of the 6 that actually come down from the ISS at given times. So this starts to be used in different ways. Here's an example of the space station coming out of Eclipse, and you can see the sunrise happening, and that's all the calculation of when that occurs is all done with orbital mechanics math, and then syncs up with the video. And again, you get to have this connection of, thank goodness my calculations were right. And you start to have this ability, if you need to try to figure out an anomaly that happened on a spacewalk, you can jump to that point in the mission, pause, look at different downlinks at that time, look at what imagery was taken, maybe perhaps later on of the troublesome part. Here's an example of it being used not on a spacewalk. This is during the latest Crew Dragon docking. And you can see they're snapping lots of photos on the right that are appearing in rapid fire from the SLRs they have on board as you pick different downlinks of data that occurred during the actual docking. And you don't usually get this view, even if you work at NASA, to try to understand exactly where they were over the surface of the Earth at this time, and to place all that imagery back into the context of the video feeds. Normally, this stuff comes down and is stored kind of from a file view with great metadata and description of each file, but the files aren't all pulled back together to recreate
Dragon,
what occurred.
SpaceX on the big loop, soft capture confirmed.
Example of Earth imagery and how that can be used in this system. So here I pause as this photo is taken of Mount Etna. As it was erupting, it was a point of interest. And this is an SLR photo taken through a window on, I believe, the cupola on the ISS. And these photos are amazing, but it wasn't even necessarily metadata that showed it was Mount Etna until you realize that's Mount Etna right there in the map. And they were right over the Adriatic Sea, looking over most of Italy from 500 kilometers up at this oblique angle of Mount Etna. And this is something that was taken a couple months ago that I just couldn't resist but to put in. This is a series of images that were taken of the moon rising over the horizon of Earth from the International Space Station as they flew over the Middle East in the desert. And what better tribute to what we all have our eye on the ball right now of the next step of human exploration of space, which is coming with the Artemis program. And the Artemis program is currently underway, as we've all been following in the news. But this time we are not landing on one of the equatorial landing sites like Apollo did. This time we are going to the South Pole of the moon. And the South Pole is a very special place. Because the moon is at almost 90 degrees to the sun, there are areas on the South Pole that never get any sun and have not received any sun for billions of years. I hesitate to say billions or millions. I actually don't know if it's billions or millions, but it's a very long time. And there's evidence to show that there's a precursor to water called hydroxyl mixed in with the regolith in these areas. And we can go there to learn whether we can use resources that are on the moon already for fuel and consumables, life support, to learn how to live there long term. And so going back for Artemis is not similar to Apollo in that it's kind of to go just to check it out. This is to go to try to see what it's going to take to learn to live there and hopefully as an extension of the Artemis program to create something similar to the International Space Station, but on the surface of the moon, and that it's constantly crewed with people. And I'll just leave you with this last thought that, as everybody talks about having their Apollo moment that inspired a generation, this is, my argument is that Apollo in real time, or Artemis in real time, will be how we give the world their Artemis moment. Because we no longer have Walter Cronkite to show us the way during Apollo. We need to give people direct access to the raw material in the way that we've shown they have an appetite for with Apollo in real time. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but I'm happy to stick around for as long as anybody is interested.
Hey, Ben, that was awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think everybody here is, the comments have been blowing up with how great this is. So I think, a lot of us were familiar with it, from definitely back in the beginning and during the Apollo 11. I can definitely attest to how important that was to people around the world to see that, people here, people around the world to see it. I think you mentioned a couple of different things, just real quick in closing, looking through a window into history. I mean, this is so unique that we have, that the materials were there for you to be able to do this, and that you had the skills to bring it together, and the endurance to stay with it and build a team. I think it's something really, it's really unique, but it speaks not only to the work you've done, but it speaks to the importance of archival sources, right? I mean, because that's the critical piece that underlays this, and that's why I said, this is a perfect thing for NASA history to be focusing on, because, our mission is to capture, preserve, and then to wait for folks like you to come along and do this, just incredible work and putting together. So again, I just can't thank you enough for everything you've done. I appreciate you giving this presentation, and look forward really to collaborating with you on the future, because I think Jim Green, who's our chief scientist here at NASA, made the comment, can't wait to see this for the Artemis program, and you're already knowing that you're already interested in that and working with us. I think that's something that we as a history program and an archival program are ready to work with you to find out more about how you were able to do this, right? So what are the sources that folks like you are going to need? I mean, we have the skill set to do that, but we want to be working in concert with you. So thanks so much for that, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think a theme has been, we know that Apollo data is not cooperative. It takes years to massage into this format. ISS information is easily made more cooperative because it's already digital. But then the forward-leaning question is, what can we put in place for Artemis so that the data comes in pre-made so that it can lend itself to a system like this for the preservation of its context? Because we still think at NASA in terms of specific instruments or principal investigators, use LRO as an example for, particular sensor or camera, isn't necessary, doesn't have the requirement to say, make sure that this works with all the cameras next to it. Everybody would agree, oh, that's a great idea, but unless there's a hard requirement, it's not going to happen by itself. So we're hoping to reach into the Artemis program a little bit and put some pretty easy requirements in place that don't require much additional effort, but will have this huge impact of result of making everything have a common denominator.
Yeah, no doubt. And one other point too, I mean, Dave Draper mentioned, how important something like this, your product has been for surface science and something like this, to coordinate all this and find out these exact locations and things like that. So I think it's another example of history working within NASA is just that, right? So we are, the history program is a public history program to disseminate this information to the public, but it's also to inform leadership about, what's worked in the past, what's happened in the past, and how that has a bearing on the present. I think, Noah, somebody who knows all about that as well, and the data that they've produced and how that'll be used the next time, making sure that's preserved, making sure it's available, and it's there to inform, this, work that will be done, just like you said. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. Any final thoughts there?
No, I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. I wonder if I should just try to type some of the answers, or would you like to deal with some of those now?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can. Let's see. We've got a little bit of time. I think I saw one question pop up from Sarah LeClaire here. It's this is definitely a great job. After all this hard work, do you have one particular favorite moment from all of the missions? I think that's probably a lot of them, but any in particular?
Yeah, there's a lot of moments. I think what becomes my favorite are like little inside jokes or things like that you wouldn't normally understand unless you had spent a huge amount of time with the content that allows you to get the sense of humor. Like you really start to feel like this strange feeling of really getting to know these guys and what makes them tick. And even when the one's irritated, which I remember on 17, I can now hear irritation in Crew's voice that I couldn't pick up on earlier in the mission. So it's kind of, I'm getting around the question because there is no particular instance that's the most interesting, but they just, all the little meaningless instances start to become more important or interesting as you get further into the material.
Yeah. Let's see here. John Goodman actually asked about and you've kind of hinted at this too, but the Apollo crew, how have they interacted and commented, and what words have they given you for the work you've done?
Yes. I heard from Mike Collins, actually, who very sadly recently passed away, just on Twitter, thanking me for the work and saying that he couldn't wait to dive in and he didn't know what to look at first. So it just sounded a bit overwhelming. But Jack Schmidt specifically has been very supportive of me for many years now. And he's a big proponent of this and never misses an opportunity to help move the ball down the field and getting the word out on this kind of stuff, or maybe pushing a little bit on a digitization effort to say, hey, could you hurry up? Those types of things have been helpful from Jack over the years. But I'm not. I'm really trying to stay out of their way. If they're interested in this and would like to learn more, that's fine. But I'm not lining up for autographs and being another person asking for things of them. I'm just trying to celebrate the work that they did. That's so important.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the other thing too, just when in considering, interpretation of, in the interpretive elements of history, I mean, kind of in the museum setting, I see we had a lot of our, air and space folks on board here listening to this, and I'm sure they've given you lots of feedback. Margaret Wiedekamp, Jennifer Levasseur and Teasel, your Harmony, Mike Neufeld. The ability that a product like this has to inform the public in a way that they can get behind, right? It's interesting, it's engaging, it's digital humanities kind of at its finest in a public history setting. Beyond this, have you seen this engaged with in the museum setting? And I guess with COVID, it's been a little bit difficult. But before that, yeah. Have you seen it engaged in a museum?
I actually have not, but that was one of my first thoughts, was this would be a great installation somewhere, until I went and spent some time in a museum. If you go to the Smithsonian and you watch what's going on and you try to put yourself in the shoes of an exhibitor, you have someone's attention for like 1 second at each of the things. And this is the opposite of that. This is like the long, slow, deeper, more meaningful interaction that you're not going to get as you're walking through a gallery. But I think that there is something there. But it wouldn't be a normal installation. But it could perhaps it could be an art exhibit or something like that, where people want to go in and feel it in a certain way. But again, power of the internet. The museum can come to you. You just type in the URL and you get a pretty solid experience right on your monitor.
Hey, you got it. Well, all right. I think that's it for us today here. This has been great. And again, I guess we'll put the link in the chat there, if you will, just to make sure everybody's got direct access to it. And thank you again for doing this, Ben. It's been an incredible thing. And thanks for everyone for joining us.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'll see you on Twitter if you have questions.
You got it, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone.